guys, welcome back to Earth to Rosita. So this is the series where I'm talking about the elements throughout the signs. So Earth, Air, Fire, Water. And today we're going to be talking about water. So water in astrology. There's so much that I can say about water, but I think that the main characteristics of water signs is intuitive, deep, emotional. They have very compassionate nature to them. And I'm actually go through each of the signs and talk about their qualities. Cardinal, fixed, and mutable quality, and their ruling planets, and how all of that information intermingles with them being simply a water sign, and how they tend to behave. So I'm gonna start with Cancer. Now, Cancer is a cardinal sign, and they are ruled by literally the moon. So they are the most emotional out of all of them. Especially now, this they're the most emotional and the most intuitive, but they're not necessarily the most psychic. They understand people. They are very deep. They get into depressive modes very easily, very quickly. But because they are a very emotionally driven sign, not just because of their water element, but because being ruled by the moon. The moon in astrology is the center point of emotion. So they do tend to fall into depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts a lot easier than the other two signs. And it's very sad. It's very sad. They don't know how to get out of it. If they have a lot of Cancer in their chart. They tend to be very secretive. They tend to be, like all water signs, they tend to be very kind of passive aggressive. And this does come with all of the water signs. The water signs kind of bury themselves in emotion, and I think that I'll get to why at the end of the video, because I wanted to focus on Cancer first. I wanted to focus on the signs first. But because Cancers are ruled by the moon, they can go either way. They could be master manipulators of people emotionally, or they can bury themselves in that emotion. When they fall in love, they tend to become very clingy. They tend to become very attached to the point where their partner could feel like they're being suffocated, essentially. The concept of space doesn't really mean much to a Cancer. They kind of want to possess their partner. More so than Scorpio. I would argue that Scorpio is not as possessive as people think, and that's because of their planetary placements. So that's what they're like in love. They're very deep, they're very poetic, but they can be possessive, a little bit manipulative, passive aggressive when hurt. Uh, if they get confronted by something, they're like, if their partner says something kind of harsh to them, they're really gonna like hold on to that and kind of retreat into their shell, and just be very depressed and hurt by anything hurtful their partner says. But on the plus side, they can be very intuitive, very careful with what they say to their partner. This can cause problems because if their Cancer dominant partner says something to upset them, they don't really tell that partner that. They like to deal with things on their own. So that is Cancer and love. Now Cancer, when it comes to lifestyle and work, they tend to go for kind of like easygoing jobs, or jobs that have meaning, or they cannot go into a job that doesn't serve some kind of a higher purpose. They can't go into like maybe the fashion industry or something, or modeling. I'm not saying there are no Cancers out there in the model industry. I'm saying there are, like, when you're dominated by Cancer energy, you want to do something that takes care of other people, or it connects you to other people or animals even. You need substance. You need something meaningful to be able to live your life. And even if you don't really resonate with that, then you most likely will put aside your life for your family, for instance. So you tend to become sacrificial. So you put your family's needs before your own. Especially because Cancer is not only ruled by the moon, but they are the symbol of the mother. They're a very motherly sign. Now, moving on to Pisces. Scorpio, because I'm going in cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So Scorpio is a very interesting one, especially because they are a feminine placement that is ruled by two planets, two kind of like conflicting planets that really like make them stand out, and kind of separate them from water signs in a way that, so Scorpio is ruled by majorly Pluto, which is kind of essentially a hell planet, but they are also ruled minor in Mars. So Mars is also connected to Aries, and it is the planet of aggression and war. So Scorpios have a problem with aggression and war. So when this sign, if your astrology natal chart is dominated in this sign, you tend to have a lot of problems when it comes to sex. And I don't mean you're not good at sex. I mean, the beginning of your life, you're going to go through some kind of traumatic event with something sexual, or you can become the sexual predator, or you are a child who was sexually abused, and then you became the sexual abuser. So I'm not saying that like this applies to every single Scorpio. Can you imagine how bad that would be? I'm saying if you have, especially I've seen a lot of people that have Mars and Venus and Sun in their astrology natal chart, they tend to go down the route of being sexual abusers, sexual predators. They tend to go toward a darker side, not just with sex, actually, just with anything in general. Like, they tend to not do the shadow work, especially if it's a male body taking on Scorpio energy. So yeah, they tend to become very dark and go onto the dark side. And that's a shame, because they could be so great in other aspects. Like, being ruled by Pluto is like, the potential for what you can do with that kind of energy inside of you is insane. And it's like so sad that a lot of Scorpios don't do like some self-healing and really like do the shadow work on themselves so that they can reach the higher aspect of themselves and really help humanity, you know? Like, if you're somebody like Walking Phoenix, now that is an evolved Scorpio who has probably done the shadow work, whether he intended to or not. And a lot of Scorpios also have a connection to the dead. So they are the most psychic of all of the signs. This is something that is very apparent to them from the moment they're a child, you know? I even, like, it was very profound. I even heard the story of Joaquin Phoenix explaining to us the story of how he turned vegan at such a young age. So yeah, it's very interesting. When a Scorpio is in love, they don't really become possessive. I don't think so anyway. I think that they can fall into like times when they're kind of obsessive with their partner, but they can do that alone, by themselves as well. Like, what I mean by that is that Scorpios like to overanalyze. They like to look at information over and over again. And I don't think that necessarily means that they're possessive. I think that just means that they need all of the information to feel secure, especially as a fixed sign ruled by Mars and Pluto. If they are suspicious of their partner, most of the time they're right. They just have an inherent knowing to people's hidden intentions, like no other sign in the zodiac. And sometimes, because of their Mars placement, they even ignore the warning signs, because Mars is more about action instead of something like the moon, like a planetary placement like the moon. So I think that because of Pluto and Mars combining together to form like one energy, being a Scorpio, it does give a fiery energy to the Scorpio. Now Scorpios, when they get depressed, but I think that the way that they handle it is they write about it, they sleep a lot, but this isn't because they're like so much in their feelings, but I don't know how to explain this. I think it's more so because them being a fixed sign, they need to get away from everyone and to do the inward work on their own, without any pressure, without any opinion, without anyone interjecting on how they should deal with something or what they should do. They don't want people to get in the way of them doing their shadow work. So a lot of Scorpios, they also want to be in a line of work where it means something. It's something higher. It's something that serves a higher purpose. But they see the dark side of humanity too, very easily. So it's very hard for them to unsee that once they see it. And it's very hard for them to want to be intermingled with this world. And they don't want to have to deal with people. They're not introverted per se, not all of them are introverted per se, but they would rather do something that gives them the freedom to do it whenever they want. And especially because they have some Libra energy coming through. Now, I'm not saying the whole cusp stuff. I mean, because before each sign, the sign before your sign. So, for instance, Libra feeds off of Virgo a little bit. The same way Scorpio feeds off of Libra a little bit. Whether it's a cusp or not, they do take something from the previous sign. And it doesn't really matter what planetary placement they all have, but there is a connection with those two signs. Now, Scorpios tend to have a lot of trauma when they're younger. And this is like, I feel like this is something written in a Scorpio's karma before they were even born. They have a lot of problems when it comes to sex and death. That's the main two traumas that they carry on. And they're here to do the shadow work of. Okay, so now I'm gonna move. So that's enough about Scorpio. Now I'm gonna move on to Pisces. So Pisces is ruled by Neptune. And Neptune is I always think that it's the planet that is ruled by mermaids and mermen. Honestly, I think that they are a very dreamy planet, and their connection to water is a lot deeper than the other two signs because of their Neptunian watery planet. Like, it's a blue planet. It's literally like astronomers have shown us that it's literally a blue planet. So because of their mutable quality, Pisces is probably the least emotional of the other two water signs. And this is because of their very childlike, go with the flow nature of being mutable. But they are very sweet. And they do have like a psychic sense to them. But it's not like as intense as Scorpio and Cancer. They tend to need fantasy as their escape. So they tend to become addicted to some kind of a thing, whether it's a good addiction or a bad addiction. So they could either go from becoming alcoholics or addicted to something more positive, like creating art, or maybe even like gaming and inventing games, something of that nature. Because of their mutable quality, when it comes to love, they tend to go for a lot of people that are more free-spirited than emotional. I think that they're definitely not as intense as the other two signs. Nowhere near as intense, I mean, as the other two signs when they're in love. I mean, they do love the person, but at the same time, they're the most in line with their element of water, you know? They go with the flow, they don't smother their partner, they understand the need for space, they understand the need to not be clingy, they understand the need to not be dependent, and not have their partner feel smothered. They're kind of like the hippies of the zodiac, of the water signs. They're very free-spirited, but they also, they're very emotional, but they don't hold on to those emotions as strongly as a Scorpio or Cancer can. So that's what makes them different when they're in love. They don't like to smother, and they don't like to be smothered. They're very sweet still when it comes to love. They're very considerate. They're intuitive by nature, so they understand their partner on a very deep level. Their communication is not passive aggressive, but they're not mean either. Like, if they have something to say, when their partner bothers them, they will, say it, but they'll say it very gently, very lovingly, and very feminine-like. They're very romantic, but not like in a Libra way or Gemini way, but how do I explain this? They observe their partner in a way that, like, they just like observe their partner, really like collect information about their partner, and they make mental notes about what their partner likes and stuff like that, and later on they'll surprise their partner with something. But because of their very sweet nature, they do tend to fall into maybe abusive patterns, abusive relationships. A Pisces is probably the most likely to become an artist of some kind. And this is because of, their creative nature. They become great musicians, painters, or graphic designers, fashion designers. They tend to just really delve into that kind of industry, and they're not afraid. They're not afraid to really go out there and work their asses off. So that's the career choice of the Pisces. They do want to help people. There's always an inherent need for the water signs to help people in some way, but the way that they express it is through creativity and art. They want to help people through what they can make and what they can create and what they can show you that can touch your heart on heart and soul. So that's what the kind of human being you will get when you're dominated by Pisces energy. Very dreamy, very loving, very logical kind of. Now, when it comes to summarizing all of these signs and explaining the significance of water, being ruled by water, you'd have to consider the expressions, maybe expressions that we see throughout nature, and how water interacts with everything living and alive on this earth. So where there is water, there is life. We already know this. So where there is water, where there is life. Water gives life. You plant a seed and then you help it grow when you give it water. Our body needs a certain amount of water for it to function well. The oceans, if the oceans died, if the oceans became so dirty, where is that going to leave Earth? That is how vital water is in this realm, in this earthly realm. Water signs are not excluded from that. So water dominated human beings. There is something so fundamentally important, and I don't want to put a ranking on how important water is, because obviously every single element is just as important as the other, but I feel like water does trump all of this, because it all started with water. If we had no water, the entire earth could potentially collapse. For instance, let's just take for example the bushfires, the Australian bushfires alone. The Australian bushfires alone, that is fire. So the absence of rain was ruining the earth, and the only water that we could have provided was not enough. So, and then we have to think about the way in which we treat our oceans and the inhabitants that live inside of these oceans. We put so much garbage, so much plastic in the oceans that when, like, I don't know, a turtle dies or something, when they do an autopsy of sorts on them, they only see plastic now. A man-made piece of shit, basically, is going into our oceans and ruining the life, like a life within a life, a planet within a planet. Because the ocean is so wide that it's like another world, essentially, and we haven't even explored every single aspect of the ocean. Can you imagine what we can find if we were to do that? So that is the summary of water signs and water element in general, and why, like, water signs are really important to balance in the world, in the grand scheme of things. Whether they have been like a shitty person to you, there's a reason for that. You know, there's a yin and yang that I think water signs understand better than any other sign. Okay, so I had to change the position of my camera and myself, for that matter, because the sun is shifting and the colors are probably going to be different now, like the colors of my face and stuff like that. You're going to probably see how tanned I actually am. But anyways, that concludes the water element for this series. The next one I will be doing is the element of fire. And yeah, and then it will go on to earth. No, it will go on to air, and then earth, and then that concludes this series. I hope that what you found, what I said in this water elements video was somewhat helpful, somewhat insightful for you. I hope that you enjoyed it. I have some other astrology videos that I will make a playlist of, and I will link them down below. Some compatibility videos, as well as a sun/moon message according to the astrological wheel right here. So yeah, I'll link that somewhere up here, or just down below if you prefer to just turn off annotations and look at the description. Yeah, that is all that I have for you guys today. And I also do like 4 vlogs a week where I just I get into my car and I talk about literally anything that's on my mind, whether it's something spiritual or I just start rambling about anything and then it leads to something and I don't even know. But if you're interested in those kinds of vlogs, then definitely click subscribe. And if it's not really something you're interested in, I still do astrology, and I have some veganism ideas coming up. So if you are into any of those, then click subscribe. I have like an idea in my head of something I want to do for vegan activism this year. I'm really hoping to be able to pull it off, but yeah, definitely please click subscribe, because it really helps me and motivates me to keep on making videos. And give this video a like if you enjoyed what I have to say about water as an element and how it interacts with the earth and what it does to the signs. And yeah, stay safe out there, especially during this time with the coronavirus craziness going on. Please, please take it seriously. I know that it could be a bit difficult for you guys to boost up your immune system. Always be super hygienic. Avoid human interaction as much as you can. And if you can't, if you're like in a relationship or something, then just tell your partner to be careful as well. I know that it's hard to take something seriously when it isn't affecting us directly, but please take this seriously, because there is no vaccine for this, and you have to be considerate of other people as well. Even if you will be fine, you know, somebody else might not be. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys for today. Subscribe, have a lovely day and night, bye!